Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today's section will be on linguistics, that is one of the special unit of our UGC NET English literature syllabus. So as we give emphasis, we should give emphasis to all the units that is present in our syllabus, but it seems like we give emphasis to other units more, and units like research methodology, linguistics, English in India faces a little less more attention than the other units, but it's we should actually give emphasis to each and every unit, because from most of the units, from all the units, questions were being asked, and we can see now in the recent papers, recent some 2 to 3 years of previous year papers, that they are asking questions from linguistic. Mostly 2 to 3 questions were asked from linguistics, and even in TGT exam, PGT exam, we can see that they are asking questions from linguistics, so that we never want to miss, even it is a question of 1 mark or 2 mark, we don't want to miss anything, because that 1 mark or 2 mark can also somehow make a point where we can lose some marks, or we can not qualify the cutoff because of that 1 or 2 marks. So it's very much important to give emphasis, give proper attention to each unit of the syllabus that is presented in our English literature. So without much delay, let's start the video on linguistics. I hope you'll enjoy today's video, and it will definitely help you in the upcoming exams. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what is linguistics and some of the key areas we need to focus from the examination point of view of UGC NET, TGT, PGT, and some of the key areas we need to focus mainly on this linguistics subject. So first, let's understand what is linguistics. So linguistics is all about the understanding about how language works, and it involves the studying of the structure of language, like its sound, its words, and the grammar, how a language is structured. And the second point is the meaning and use of the language that is presented, or that is used in the context or behind the context of that language. So linguistic is the most important because it bridges the communication and creativity. And this breeze helps us to understand how language shapes literature and thought. So we are going to focus on some of the key areas that you'll see further in that video, that we are going to focus on language structure and history. In this area, we are going to talk about how language developed, because questions were asked from this area also. And then we'll learn about some of the key linguistics and their theories, and how their theories actually help to develop the language, or how we learn our language. And third, we are going to learn about the language we learned and how to apply them, or to know about the application of the linguistic concepts in our literary studies. So this is all about the linguistics, what is linguistics, and the key areas we are going to focus in our upcoming part. So first, to make our foundation clear about language and linguistic, we need to understand how the language originated. We need to know about some of the best ways that how we can understand language in a better way. And we need to know about the origin of English. So now we are going to learn about these things to make our foundation clear. Also, some of the questions were asked in the previous were NET, TGT, PGT from this part also. So we need to understand this part in order to better understand the other things I am going to tell you in the video. So I hope you'll concentrate on this part, and we'll learn something new today. So let's start. So first, we are going to talk about the origin of the language. So throughout the history, scholars, philosophers, and scientists have speculated about how language has begun. So, no single theory has been universally accepted, but there are several intriguing views, like the divine source theory. So, in the divine source theory, many cultural aspects or many cultures believe that language was a gift from the divine. For example, if we talk about our Hindu tradition, Sanskrit is considered as the language of the gods. So this is how, just like Hindu tradition, there are so many other tradition or other culture, and they also believed that language was a gift from divine. So this is the divine source hypothesis. Next comes the natural sound theories. So there are two aspects that comes under the natural sound theory, that is bow wow theory and the poo poo theory. So, in the Bow Wow theory, this theory suggested that early humans imitated the natural sounds such as animal cries to form words. For instance, if we take words like buzz, meow, cuckoo, they may have originated this way. And in the poo poo theory proposes that language evolved from instinctive emotional cries like ouch for pain, ah for surprise. And these theories emphasize how closely our environment has been influenced the early communication. Next, if we talk about the social interaction theory and gesture vocal theory, so in social interaction theory, language arose from the sounds that people made while working together, such as chants or rhythmic grunts during the group task. So these are some of the ways how the social interaction also developed the language. And in the gesture and vocal theory, this theory argues that gesture were the first form of communication. Later, they combined with the vocal sounds to form a new type of language. And also, we have biological evolution, from which we can say that language also originated, because in the biological perspective suggests that language evolved as human brains and vocal cords developed. So scientists often compare the vocal tract of the humans and primates to show that how unique our ability to speak is. Next, let's talk about the best ways to understand human language. Now that we have explored how language might have started, now it's time to focus on how linguistic studies and how we need to understand human language today. So there are several approaches like structural linguistic, comparative philology, social linguistic, neurolinguistic, psycholinguistic, the use of sound signals, arbitrariness, the need of learning, displacement, creativity, duality or double articulation. These are some of the best ways how we can understand human language. Next, let's talk about the origin of the English language. So, finally, we are going to take a closer look at how English, one of the most widely spoken languages that is presented today, evolved over the period of time. So, in the Old English period, English began with the arrival of the Germanic tribes like the Angles, Saxon, and Jutes in Britain. So, Old English was heavily influenced by their dialects and later by the Norse due to the Viking invasion. So words like sky, egg, they come from the Norse language. And after the Old English period, after the Norman conquest in 1066, French had a significant impact on the English vocabulary in the Middle English period. The French had a significant impact on the English vocabulary and grammar. And during this period, the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer showcased the richness of Middle English. And after Middle English, with the advent of the printing press in 1476, English began to stabilize. And the Renaissance introduced many new words from Latin and Greek, and British colonialism brought even more global influence. So this period gives us works like by Shakespeare, King James Bible, which shaped the language as we know it today. So, the origin of language remains one of the greatest mysteries of the human history. And while modern linguistics helps us to decode how language works, so finally, the evolution of the English reflects a rich tapestry of cultural and historical influence. So, how I hope now that you have learned about the origins of language, some of the best ways to know language, and about the origin of our English language. I now hope that you have cleared your foundation about what linguistic is and how the language developed to further understand the video in a more better way. Now we are going to learn about some of the key areas that is presented in the linguistics. So first we are going to talk about phonetics and phonology. So in phonetics is the scientific study of the speech sounds that focuses on their production, transmission, and perception. And there are some branches of phonetics like articulatory phonetics. So articulatory phonetics studies how speech sounds and how they are produced by the human vocal apparatus. For example, how the tongue, lips, and vocal cords shape sounds, we learned about them in the articulatory phonetics. And in acoustics phonetics, we analyzes the physical properties of the sound waves like the frequency, the amplitude, etc. And in auditory phonetics, we focuses on how sounds are perceived by the ear and the brain. So some of the key concepts that is presented under the phonetics are consonants and vowels. So consonants and vowels are differentiated by the airflow and the vocal tract configuration. That is, they are known as consonants and vowels. As all of us know about the consonants and vowels, I'm not telling more about it, but remember that it is differentiated by the airflow and the vocal tract configuration. And let's talk about International Phonetic Alphabet, that is IPA. So IPA is a system to represent the speech sounds that is produced universally. And now let's move to phonology. So phonology deals with the organization, patterns, and function of sounds in specific language, and it focuses on the mental and linguistic aspect of sounds rather than the physical production. So some of the key concepts we can talk about: phonemes, allophones. So phonemes is the smallest distinctive sound units in a language. Example, if we distinguish pat, that is PAT, and bat, BAT, we are going to differentiate it from the words P and B. So P and B became the smallest distinctive sound units that is presented in a word or in a language. Just like that, let's talk about allophones. So allophones is the variation of a phoneme that do not change its meaning. Let's take an example. In pin and spin. In pin, the aspirated p and the unaspirated p in spin. So pin, spin, it almost sounds like same. And if we talk about the syllable structure, the organization of sounds into units like onset, nucleus, coda, that is presented in the phonology. And stress, intonation, rhythm, they emphasize the pitch, the timing that affect its meaning and expression. So this is all about the phonetics and phonology. You just need to remember that phonetics is the study of speech sound and remember its branches. And in case of phonology, just understand the phonology is the study of sound system and its patterns. And about some of the key concepts, just remember about the phonemes and allophones. So as we learnt about the phonemes and phonetics, let's learn about morphology. So morphology is the branch of linguistics that studies about the structure and formation of words. We learnt about the letters, now we learnt about the words. So it examines how smaller units of meaning called morphemes, they combine to form, these morphemes combine to make words. So morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in a language. Please note, morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in a language. So there are some types of morphemes, that is free morphemes and bound morphemes. So free morphemes can stand alone as words like book, happy. But in case of bound morphemes, they cannot stand alone and they must attach themselves to other morphemes like prefixes like suffixes like ed, unnatural, like natural can stand alone, so it's a free morpheme, but on itself has no meaning, so it must be added to another morpheme to make itself permanent. So the prefixes and the suffixes are known as the bound morphemes. So let's learn how the word formation process. So by adding the prefixes, suffixes, infixes, circumfixes to a base word, we can form words. And by compounding, like combining two or more words to form a new word. For example, if we combine black and board, it becomes blackboard, and it becomes a new word. So by the word compounding, we can make a new word. And by the reduplication, like repeating all of a part of a word, like bye bye, hi hi, we can make new word. Bye is a different word, bye is a different word, but adding the two words together, bye bye, we can make the reduplication. And just like that, if we talk about blending, blending is the combining parts of two words, like brunch, that is breakfast, plus lunch, this is a Genji term. So brunch becomes the combination of the word breakfast and lunch. So this is known as the blending. Just like that, if we talk about smoke, there is the blending of smoke and fog, so it becomes smoke. And just like that, there is a clipping. So clipping is the shortening of a longer word. For example, from advertisement, we pick only ad, so it becomes the it becomes clipping by the formation of clipping. So clipping is the shortening of a longer word, and by that, we can, by using this method, we can form a new word. So these are about some of the word formation process that we need to know from the examination point of view. So now let's talk about the syntax. So syntax is the we learned about the phonics, phonology. We learned about the morphology. Now let's learn about the syntax. So syntax is the study of sentence structure and its rules. So syntax is the study of the structure and arrangement of words, phrases, and clauses in a sentence. And this syntax focuses on how linguistic elements combine to form grammatically correct and meaningful sentence in a language. Like we focus on word order, so the sequence in which words appear in a sentence is the rule of the syntax term. For example, there is a subject verb object in English, like see is the subject, reads is the verb, books is the object. So it becomes, if we look from the point of view of SVO, that is subject verb object, it becomes see reads books. And if we write books read see, there will be no meaning of this sentence. So as it does not follow the rule of the syntax, it will have no meaning. This sentence will have no meaning. But if we follow the rule and write the sentence in a correct way by placing the correct word order, it will become a prominent sentence. The sentence will have some validity. And just like that, there is a phrase structure. So how words group together into phrases, like noun phrases, verb phrases. For example, the quick brown fox is a noun phrase. If we'll say that fox brown quick, this is not a actual sentence. So this is about the phrase structure. Just like there is a clauses type, like independent clause, dependent clause. Independent clause is that where it can stand alone as a complete sentence, like he runs fast. It is an independent clause. And how we are going to learn about the dependent clause? Dependent clauses requires an independent clause to make sense, like because he was late. So this is about the independent clause and dependent clause. And there is a concept we can know about syntax from this theory, like the generative grammar by Noam Chomsky. So generative grammar is a theory by Noam Chomsky that explains about syntax as a set of rules that is capable of generating all grammatically correct sentence. So this is all about the syntax. I hope you will be able to understood about the syntax. So now let's learn about the semantics and pragmatics. So semantics is the study of meaning in a language, and pragmatics is the study of language in its context. So semantics is the study of meaning in language, and it focuses on how words, phrases, and sentence convey literal meaning. There is lexical semantics, like it examines the meaning of words and their relationship, like synonyms, antonyms, homonyms. And there is compositional semantics, like it studies how meanings of individual words combine in a sentence. And in case of denotation and connotation, we have in semantics. So in denotation, that is the literal meaning. Example, rose. If you say rose, we mean it as a flower only. So it is the denotation meaning, what we want to denote. And connotation is the implied meaning, means suppose in connotation we connotation is the associated meaning. For example, rose as a symbol of love. So this is the difference between the connotation and the denotation. So now let's talk about the pragmatics. So pragmatics is the study how the language is used in context and how meaning depends on situational factors. Like if we talk about context, there is so many contexts, like social context, cultural context, situational factors that affect the meaning of a particular sentence. For example, if I say, can you pass the salt? We can take it as a request, not as a literal question. We are requesting that please can you pass the salt. So this is the context we are talking about. And if you talk about the speech chat theory, so function of language, that is promising, requesting, apologizing, these are the acts by which a sentence can be seen, in which context we can see a sentence. uh, so this is all about the semantics and pragmatics. So now we're going to talk about some of the additional branches that is presented in the linguistics. So beyond these core areas, we have sociolinguistics, we have historical linguistics, we have applied linguistics. So sociolinguistics is the branch that explores how language varies across the social groups and settings, like code switching between formal and informal speeches, considered under the sociolinguistics. And if we talk about historical linguistics studies about the evolution of language over the period of time. Like if we talk about the great vowel shift, I already talked about the great vowel shift in the origins of the language. So the great vowel shift in English changed how the vowels are pronounced. So we study about this under the historical linguistic part. And in the part of the applied linguistics, we talk about the practical application, like teaching English or developing language technologies. So about the applied linguistics, there are more questions asked from this part. So I am thinking of making a different video on this applied linguistic part, because more questions were asked from this part only. Now let's talk about Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. So Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is proposed by Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee Whorf, and this hypothesis argues about that language influences thoughts and perceptions. So some of the key concepts used in this hypothesis is linguistic determinism, linguistic relativity. So linguistic determinism is what? It is about the language that determines our thought. And in case of linguistic relativity, it shows that language shapes thought but does not limit the actual thought process. So, for example, if we talk about the Inuit language that have multiple words for snow that reflects its environment, and time perception also differs in language with distinct time-related vocabulary. So this hypothesis overemphasizes on language impacts on thought, and some of the modern studies also suggested about a bidirectional relationship between language and thought. So in short, this Sapir-Whorf hypothesis suggests about the structure of a language, that can affect its speaker's worldview and cognition. And essentially it argues that language is not just a tool for communication, but also it shapes the way individuals think and perceive the reality that it shows. Next, we are going to learn about the Noam Chomsky's universal grammar. So, when we talk about Noam Chomsky's universal grammar, it is one of the most important part that we are going to read in linguistics, because many of the key terms that is presented in the linguistic or in case of language are borrowed from it. So let's talk about some of the key concepts in Chomsky's universal grammar. But before that, we need to know about uh, Noam Chomsky's universal grammar. So Noam Chomsky was a renowned linguistics proposed the concept of universal grammar, which suggests that all human language share a common underlying structure. And this idea is rooted in the belief that humans are biologically equipped with an innate ability to acquire language. And now let's first talk about the linguistic competence and performance. So, competence is a speaker's implicit knowledge of their language, like its rules, its syntax, etc. But in the performance, the actual use of language in speech or writing, which may include errors due to the external factors like memory limits, happens. So, competence is a speaker's implicit knowledge of their language, and performance is the actual use of the language in speech. So, Chomsky talks about a language acquisition device. So, Chomsky proposed that humans have an innate mental faculty called the language acquisition device, which helps the children to learn language quickly. And this is why children can acquire complex grammar rules without explicit teaching. You can see that without learning about the use of grammar, like some of the normal grammar sentences, children can say it without knowing about it, even because there is a language acquisition device that is presented in our mind. And now let's talk about the generative grammar. So, generative grammar is a set of rules that can generate all grammatically correct sentence in a language. So, Chomsky emphasized that language is not about memorizing sentence, but also generating infinite sentences from a finite set of rules. So, this is about the generative grammar that Chomsky talks about. Now let's talk about deep structure and surface structure that Chomsky talks about. So deep structure is the underlying grammatical relationship and meaning of a sentence, and surface structure is how the sentence is expressed in actual words. For example, John is easy to please versus John is eager to please. So there are different meanings but similar suffix structures. Please note the example: John is easy to please versus John is eager to please, and you can see yourself about the how this deep structure and suffix structure works. Now let's talk about the transformational grammar. So transformational grammar explains how the deep structure are transformed into surface structure using rules like substitution, deletion, and addition. For example, transforming the cat chased the mouse into a question like, did the cat chase the mouse? This is about the transformational grammar that Chomsky talks about. Now let's talk about some of the key terms that is actually important to know about the language in the linguistics. So let's talk about the Pidgin and Creole. So Pidgin is the simplified form of language that develops as a means of communication between the speakers of different native languages who need to trade or interact. So Pidgin is the meditator, we can say. Pidgin is the actual. Suppose you are. You know French language and I know Hindi language. But Pidgin is the English language, because I don't know French, you don't know Hindi, and we need a basic common language to interact or to trade or to communicate anything. So here English became the Pidgin. I hope now you understand. So Pidgin is the simplified form of language that is developed as a means of communication, and Pidgin has somehow limited vocabulary, simplified grammar, and it is not spoken as a native language. And now, if we talk about Creole, so Creole evolves from a Pidgin where it becomes a fully developed native language for a community. Suppose some of the people are from a French community, some of the people are from Hindu community, and they interact between themselves in English. But as their child inherited only about the English language, because they both communicated in the common language, that is English, and their child only understand English language because he talked in English language. So like this the Creole developed. So Creole is the native language that is formed from the Pidgin. So I hope now you understand about the Pidgin and the Creole, and the key differences between the Pidgin and the Creole. So Pidgin has some complex grammar issues, and Pidgin has some limited vocabulary and simplified grammars. But in case of Creole, it has a complex grammar and vocabulary. Now let's move to another two terms, that is register and a dialect. So register refers to the level of formality or style of language that is used in different social context. For example, there are formal, informal, neutral registers. Example, we can take for example that could you please help me? It becomes formal. Uh, and now if we say that can you help me, it becomes informal, because informal we use the word please, and in informal we just say can you please, can you help me. So this is how the language, the meaning, the context differ. So register refers to the level of formality or style of language that is used in different social context. And in case of dialect is a regional or social variety of a language with distinct vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar, and it is mutually intelligible with other dialects of the same language. For example, there is a key difference between the British English and American English. So these concepts highlights about language diversity and adaptability in the communication that we do in our daily life, but we do not have any idea about these terms. So this video is going to be a very long one, so I have decided to stop here, and in the I'm going to make a second part, and in the next part I'm going to talk about the Bloomfield theory, the language based learning difficulties like dyslexia, dysphagia, and different language teaching methods that we use to learn new languages or to learn about the language difficulties that we face, and about the second language acquisition theories, how we can easily acquire a second language that is different from our native language. So the second part of this linguistic unit was also going to be a very important part, because many of the questions were asked from the different languages teaching methods, or about the learning difficulties that or the key terms that is associated with the learning difficulties. So in the next part I'm going to post the next part soon, and in the next part I'm going to talk about all of this. So that's it for today. I'll see you all in the next video or next part of the linguistic unit. And if you all like today's video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel, and please wait for the second video that I'm going to post. See you all in the next video.